49ers drafted a bunch of new players. What do we think of them? How do we think about how they were picked? Find out next on Niner Nate's Nonsense. Hello and welcome to Niner Nate's Nonsense. Once again, live over here on YouTube.com. How is everybody doing? It was a wild couple days. The 49ers got some brand new players. I got a brand new mic. Looking pretty good. Without further ado, let's introduce today's guest. It's the one, the only, David Lichty. How are you doing, man?
Hey, brother. I'm good. I'm live on camera. I am not sitting outside of my car. I've got the go-ahead from my wife to be as loud as I can inside my house. And, she even let up. I'm not even sitting in the dark. So I'm excited to be on, brother.
I'm absolutely stoked to talk with you again. You know, we had a lot of fun over on Jesse Naylor's channel this weekend, you know, going through all the picks. You know, day one was a little boring for us because nothing interesting happened. But for the most part, it was just a blast to sit there and, you know, talk about these picks as they came out. And so I'm excited. Me and you were going to recap all these picks. And maybe if we have some time, if your wife doesn't get too mad at you for being loud, we'll see if we can talk a little bit about some of the other stuff going on with the 49ers. But we don't want to piss off Mrs. Lichty tonight. So we're gonna.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
We're gonna try our best not to do that. So, you know, let's start with the fact that, you know, there's a bunch of brand new 49ers. Yes, they didn't pick on the first day. You know, they didn't trade up, which I don't think either of us really thought they'd trade up. I mean, how did you feel about, you know, the way things went on the first day without Debo getting traded, you know, with the AJ Brown trade, the Hollywood Brown trade? You know, how did you feel about all that?
Yeah, you know, I think that I talked with a couple of these guys. I remember we were on live that night. I was very pleased. If they're going to sit at 61, I wanted them to go BPA, and I thought that Drake Jackson really was that guy. That being said, I think I'm glad that you asked that question, because as glad as I was that they went with who I thought was the best player available at 61. I think you can look at that draft, and granted, the Niners have been, you know, they have a great roster. I don't know, even Drake Jackson included, is there a single player in those 9 picks that is a bona fide absolute starter? Now, was that their goal? That's to be debated, right? But I think that I don't know if there's a single player that you can look to that says, nope, that guy's plugging in to be a guy that you can count on right away for big time snaps. And so that being said, with a roster the quality that the Niners have, they have the luxury to be able to fit people in rotationally and to groom them to be the guys that they want them to be. And when you're drafting as late as 61, I think the big thing is I thought they would do a little more maneuvering. I didn't think they would sit there and take 9 players, but I think that's something we'll talk about, maybe their strategy as we go forward.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of an interesting strategy. We've talked a lot about, you know, me and you personally, just, you know, on spaces and stuff, you know, the 49ers seem to have, you know, a roster that they're comfortable with. And so they tend to draft guys to maybe replace guys down the line. And so some of the stuff they did was a little, you know, head scratching. But let's just start with the first pick, which was Drake Jackson, USC defensive end. I mean, what was your initial reaction to that pick, you know, when it happened?
Yeah, I mean, I was stoked. I like I said, you guys know that I've been talking about Nick Cross for 3 months, but the thing is that, and safety was this need, but I made it very clear before the draft on the TL that said, look, I don't want them to force a selection for might be a perceived position of need. I want them, you know, you draft good players. And I think there are a lot of people out there that thought Nick Cross is more than worthy of into the second round. He ended up going into the third round, which is about the range that you thought. But no, I was stoked because I felt that Drake Jackson is a player that has first round traits. and that I thought was used incorrectly at USC. But that being said, still had a lot of success, still created a lot of pressure, is also really, he's not just a situational guy. He's not just a guy that has to rush the passer, that, pin his ears back. He can play the run. And I think that Chris Kasurik is one of the best, if not, one of the top defensive line coaches in the NFL. So you get a guy who's, just turning 21 years old here, like this month, a la Trey Lance last year. This is a kid that I think that if he would have been playing with 25 pounds more his normal weight at USC and had been developed in the correct way, like I think you're really seeing a guy that should not have fallen to 61. There's a lot of parity in the draft, and I think the Niners basically were comfortable sitting there. And once they did, they realized that he was too good to pass up. So kudos, honestly, and I'm not a shill, but kudos to John Lynch and the Niners for saying, look, we're not going to sit here and have to say we're going interior line. Everybody thought interior line and safety. And if Debo was on the move, it was wide receiver, right? I'm glad they went edge here, because to me, Drake Jackson was the guy I actually wouldn't have had a problem trading a little bit up for in the middle of the second round. And so to get him there was no brainer.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the 49ers and what they spend high picks on, and it's generally like edge rusher, it's been wide receiver, it's been defensive, tackles, because they believe that their best chance to win is to have these nasty pass rushes that allow them to just take it out of another team. And so when I think about where the 49ers have had success, since 2019, it's been the fact that their pass rush is so good that other teams just don't want to play them. And so if Drake Jackson is able to become anything what Dee Ford was when he was healthy, then this is a tremendous pick, because, generally when you don't have first round picks, you don't have like that really sexy pick that everyone's like, oh my God, this is the guy. And this guy really could become that. And that's super exciting because, I think you and Marco, specifically had told me that, USC didn't really understand how good this guy was. They messed around with him. They had one of the worst head coaches. And with the talent the 49ers have in Chris Kasurik and the talent they have around him, this guy could be a real stud and, the real future of the pass rush. If Kinlaw stays healthy and it's Bosa, Kinlaw, Armstead, and Drake Jackson is a good football player, this is a nasty pass rush that could really help them out, like it did in 2019.
Yeah, and I agree. Hey, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you're good.
Perfect. Yeah, no. So, and I think that's that's exactly where I felt. And people go back and forth about what's more important than coverage or pass rush. And I think that there's really good arguments on both ways. I think it's really more. I don't think it's. I mean, it is more complex, but I also think it's complementary. I don't think it's possible just to say that, you have this monster pass rush and everything gets taken care of in the secondary, vice versa. And I think the 49ers have done a good job of retaining, play. So here's the thing, like, what were you going to do in the draft? I think with Charvarius Ward, again, I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. I think he's a person that is way underrated on the free agency scene. I think he's one of the best signings in all of free agency. And you've retained Jimmy Ward. You had that position at safety, but I think they're going to be willing to platoon that. Then you got Emmanuel Mosley. You've got Avery Thomas. You got Jason Verrett coming back on a 1-year contract. It remains to be seen how healthy he's going to be. But I don't think you're going to, after the first round cornerbacks, let's say you're looking at Stingley, Sauce, and then maybe if McDuffie's your cup of tea. After that, though, really, like, there weren't any cornerbacks. I like Roger McCreary a lot. He went earlier. I don't see anybody that is stepping in and starting on the outside. And so at 61, you have to ask yourself, where were your starters coming from? And to me, Drake Jackson's going to get right in there, and he doesn't have to be a finished product, but Chris Kasurik is going to get some production out of him, and it's going to be sooner than later when he's going to be a factor.
Yeah, I think that that's probably, was the most excited I was during the whole entire draft, is just knowing that they know, I guess that they know that I know that pass rush is where this team has had, all of their success. So the fact that was the first pick once again, and, they're making a conscious effort to replace Dee Ford. And like, real quick, David, that Dee Ford trade, it got them a Super Bowl berth.
Yep.
Like that trade got them the Super Bowl. And I understand, yes, people are mad because he hasn't been healthy and all that stuff. And I understand that. But that trade did get him a Super Bowl berth. And that kid, when he is healthy, is good enough to get them to a Super Bowl. He's just never healthy.
Yeah, nobody would have said anything. They should. I mean, look, we would have, could have, should have, right? But they were right there. They had they should have won that game. We know that. The bottom line is, like, you can nitpick all you want. The bottom line is, and again, we don't have to sit here and worship every move that John Lynch makes, but it was a high risk play, and I've gone back and forth on it myself. But at the end of the day, you can't fault the team for trying to go for it, and he did put that in the position. So when you look at Nick Bosa now, you've had some pieces that Chris Kosirka has been able to milk things out of, and Kerry Hyder's back for, revenge tour, and you've got guys like Samson Ebukam, Jordan Willis, Charles Omenihu. There's going to be some odd men out. Not all those guys are going to be able to make the team, and there's going to be something's going to give. And I think that Drake Jackson, he doesn't have to come in and be a world beater. He's not going to be Dee Ford right away. But I think that this is a kid that has all the tools. Like, people have said, like, he was designed in a lab to play football. Like, this kid is like, he has what it takes. He's young. And people talk about breakout age. He was productive year one at USC. In fact, that was when he was playing at the weight that he has got back for his pro day at near 270. And that's what I'm really excited about. Chris Kosirka is going to get his hands on him, and he's going to be dangerous. And you couple that with guys that are going inside, like Omenihu, which is where I want him to be. Jordan Willis lining up over tackle. Eric Armstead be able to swing inside a little bit more. This defensive line, Kinlaw, if he's healthy, look out. This defensive line, even with DJ Jones hitting the road, guys got like Kevin Givens. This defensive line is going to be as good as anybody in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, and when they've done this thing again where they went out and got guys in free agency to really create a rotation there, with the idea that eventually, maybe if it's not this year, maybe probably next year, Drake Jackson would then take over and become, that guy who's there on third down. But they have a lot of talent at D-line where they can afford, for him to take a year to become the player we all want him to be. And so I think that's just another reason this pick is good. And I think that this is just one of those picks that showed that John Lynch knew what he was doing. And then, we get to, we move on from this pick, and I think that's where the questions kind of start. We start to think about the fact that, they took a running back. That's wild. That's so crazy to me. They took a running back. And so David's back right here. We'll get him on here. You got disconnected there.
I'm back.
You're good. We're moving on. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about Tyrion Davis-Price. This was the pick that everyone kind of scratched their head about. And I think the reason they scratched their head about, and you can kind of confirm this for me, is the fact they took a running back pretty high. And, they've found that they've seen success in the later rounds at running back. And to take a running back this high is kind of weird, right?
Yeah, and I have no problem pushing back on it. I'm going to stick with my guns. I still think that this is, and I'm not, people kind of say like, oh, you're over judging, or no, like, there's nothing I'm saying that's I'm not going to go crazy. Like, I just think that, I'll put it this way. People talk about like, hey, I've been seeing this, like, people expect based on his draft capital that he's going to contribute. Well, Trey Sermon didn't contribute last year, and he was a healthy scratch all year last year. I think TDP is a really exciting player in a lot of ways, right? I think that he's a guy that's going to be able to, that can have contributions and maybe be a successful player. I still think, though, that in this situation, just because he wasn't a guy that people expected does not mean that anybody's ragging on him as a player that could have success. It's the fact that at 93, even if you don't want to take a chance on a guy like Nick Cross or Kirby Joseph, that you don't want to overdraft on guys that might not feel like fit your system. And all those guys might have some refining to have, but I still feel strongly. Like, I'm not actually wavering on, I haven't wavered on this since draft night. I am pumped to cheer on TDP. I like that nickname. And when he gets in the fantasy drafts, what's TDP's ADP going to be? That's what I'm really looking forward to. Boomer joke. But the thing is, like, honestly,
Jesus.
I know, man. But the bottom line is, I'm going to stick with it. I think that Kyle, people have hypothesized this idea that, like, okay, it's about not wanting to abuse Debo. I keep hearing that. That's great. That has nothing to do with taking him in the third round, right? You could have there are plenty of good running backs that, like, that I have full faith in Kyle and the depth of the running back class to have found, value later on in the draft. And people say, well, they're not as big as him. They're not as like, well, the Niners sometimes I feel like get obsessed about getting their guy. And I could be very wrong, but the bottom line is we can look back as far back as last year. Trey Sermon, they traded up 2 4th-round picks to get into the 3rd round to get a guy who barely played. And I'm not saying the ship has sailed for him. However, when you draft a running back in the 3rd round the year after you traded up in the 3rd round to get a guy, I'm sorry to say that's not an indictment on Trey Sermon.
Yeah.
I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid. I mean, I wish the best for TDP. I am not actually I'm not low on him. I think that he can have success and should have success. Running backs that Kyle likes should have success. I still think that at 93, that's rich. And I think that in that situation, there could have been guys that you took a flyer on that even if they didn't end up being the guy, running back could have waited, in my humble opinion.
So let's quick say hi. What's up, Taron Lewis? He's also got a question. And what's up, Bay Area Baller 18? How you guys doing? Taron Lewis has a question for us, actually. He said, should we question the drafting of the running backs? Kyle missed on Joe Williams, and maybe he feels like he missed on Trey Sermon. How are you feeling about, the Trey Sermon pick after the TDP pick, David?
So here's the thing. I like that question. And what I like about Kyle is he doesn't play politics, and he doesn't seem to linger necessarily on what he might perceive as a mistake or others might perceive as a mistake. And maybe he doesn't look at Trey Sermon as a mistake. I think he probably does. And I think this pick says something about that. The bottom line is Joe Williams, 4th round. It's a 4th-round draft pick near the end, like his first year out. I like Joe Williams out of Utah. I thought there's some questionable things in the whole whatever, but it's a 4th-round pick, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. I think people rag on Shanahan too much. But the question there is, I do think this is an indictment on Trey Sermon. I don't think that's even a hot take. When a guy was healthy all year and he couldn't get in the game, there's things that he didn't like, whether it was off the field, who knows? But I do think this is more of and this is why, though, I wonder is how much, as much as I love Kyle Shanahan as a coach, is this really something that I necessarily trust? Drafting a running back again this high? I don't know. I'm going to believe it when I see it. And I know Elijah Mitchell had some trouble staying healthy, but when he was dynamic. And I know they need a running back help. I still don't think it rationalized going that high in the draft. That's just, and I'm going to stick with that. And despite, if TDP produces, that's awesome. I still think that you could have got that production later, and whether or not it was him, the Niners sometimes I think get like so focused, I got to get this one guy, even though they've seen running backs completely ball out at UDFA.
Yeah, I mean, I like the player. When you watch the player on film, there's some things you see that are like, okay, this kid might be like a baller in this offense. I totally agree with you. At 93, I think it's the wrong pick. Just because I don't think you need to reach for a running back because there's just so many of them, and Kyle has seen so much success. I just hope that this is not an indictment of Trey Sermon. I hope that Trey Sermon's still going to play on this team. I think a lot of people talked about how Elijah Mitchell, there's things about him that were still kind of iffy. And so getting this, going out and getting TDP hopefully can fill out some of those, problems where Elijah Mitchell just wasn't hitting the right hole or whatever it is, or just, like you mentioned at the very start, someone just to help Debo out. Like maybe, they're trying just to make sure this running back room is healthy and this running back room is dynamic and talented so that they're not doing this to Debo, because Debo seems to not want to be a running back anymore. At least, from what we've heard from some of the stories, some of the people, there's been so much hearsay and so many things said about Debo at this point. I don't know what exactly it is, but Kyle must have felt that this kid could help his offense and his run game. And the 49ers, they're not making like an ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're going to run the ball down your throat. That's who they are. Trey Lance may be the quarterback, but they're going to run the ball down your throat. That's what this scheme is based on. And so the more running backs you have, when the running backs get hurt, maybe there's another one to fill the spot who's talented. I just hope that, we're not sitting here next year drafting another running back in the 3rd round. 3 years in a row would be insane. I'll forgive this year for now, but it does seem a little weird that we drafted Sermon and now here we are drafting TDP.
Yeah, and you guys have talked about everybody like pigeonholes the Niners as this exclusively outside zone, which TDP can do, but like they're also doing these gap scheme. I mean, it really has become almost an either or kind of situation where like it's gotten more into gap than it has an outside zone on certain situations. So I just think that, yeah, the big thing for me is that I don't want to be too much of a dork about it, but it is value, and I do think that we've seen in Shanahan's office, not just with the 49ers, that people have produced and they've been able to find running backs in later. You mean Elijah Mitchell, the 6th round draft pick.
Yeah.
Okay. Matt Breida, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson. These are all UDFAs. Okay. So again, you can say all you want. So, it's 93. I mean, what I'm not even if it's not an interior line or safety of positions of need, like taking a flyer on a good player at a position that is harder to find value later in the draft. And it is what it is. I'm not losing sleep over it. I wish TDP the best. I think he can have success. I mean, he should have success as a running back. But again, I think all of us thought Trey Sermon was going to have more contributions early on, and that never transpired. So let's just give him the benefit of the doubt and see what happens at training camp. Let's
move on to the next pick. It is Taron Lewis's favorite pick. He's saying he loves Danny Gray. It's his favorite pick, and he likes Jeremiah Gamble as his favorite UDFA. And we'll talk a little bit about UDFAs at the end. But, let's talk about Danny Gray. Speedster wide receiver, a lot of talent there. Obviously they're not going to get, the Garrett Wilsons, those guys. They're not going to get Sky Moore. They're not going to get Kenny Pickett. Or not Kenny Pickett. Oh my God. The Pickett. What's the name of the other Pickett guy? The one that went to the Steelers. I'm sorry.
George Pickett.
George Pickett. Jesus. These Picketts, all these names. But so Danny Gray, he's a speedster wide receiver, pretty talented. I mean, what did you think about this pick? Because, they go from TDP and then they pick this guy shortly after. This is the kind of wide receiver we've been wanting to see on the 49ers, a guy who can potentially, help out with the, he's a fast wide receiver throwing deep balls. That's ideally what happens here, right?
Yeah, I was stoked for this. I remember guys had asked me about. We were talking before that this happened about Tyquan Thornton, who I went to the Patriots in the 2nd round, or no, it may have been the 3rd. I think it might have been the 2nd round. I can't remember anymore. Thornton.
That 2nd day feels like a blur.
I know. So Tyquan Thornton and Bo Melton, and people asked me about that. And somebody asked me, "Have you heard of Danny Gray?" And I said, "Yeah." I looked at him, and I was worried I'd seen something about his drops, but the more I really looked at all 3 of those, I bumped him ahead of Khalil Shakir, who I'd had him as my number 10. I put Danny Gray at number 10. He had some drop issues, but there wasn't, his yards after catch per reception are crazy. I mean, there's a guy who has legitimate 4.3 speed, but he's also not a guy that had a lot of deep catches because their quarterback play at SMU was pretty middling. A lot of times he had to come back for balls on routes. He was getting a lot of separation. His average depth of target was a lot further downfield than his more heralded teammate Reggie Robertson, who ended up going later in the draft, or maybe even UDFA. I can't recall. And the more I looked at Danny Gray, I was like, this guy's a stud. He's not perfect. There's some route running things that I think can be refined, but boy, he does have all the skills to take the top off. But he's more than that. He's good in contested catches. He's really good at body control. And I think he's a player that, that once he gets into Kyle's offense and utilizes Trey Lance, can be really dangerous. I thought he was great value at the end of the 3rd. I had mocked him. I had written for all 49ers. That's high, like putting him in the 5th. And I mentioned in that mock, so there's no way he's getting here. And I said, this is a pipe dream, but the way it fell in the simulator, he was there. I felt very strongly that he was going to be a day 2 player. And I thought like that into the 3rd round was a really good spot to get him. And I'm glad the Niners said, hey, if we're going to draft a receiver, let's get our guy and not wait. And I think that was I thought it was an excellent pick at 105.
We got Nathan Bobick right here. What's up, fellas? One of my favorite Niner fans from down under. Let's go Niners. Let's go Niners. I can't do the accent though. I was trying to like, let's go.
I'm not even gonna try.
No, I'm not gonna try. I've been watching that Below Deck, and that's how I got the blue dick. That's how I got.
Jesus Christ.
It's below deck, but when you say it with their accent, it sounds like below dick. So
Hey
anyway,
man,
back to the 49ers. Sorry, my mind just works like this
the
sometimes.
Blue Man Show. Yeah.
Yeah, and so what's funny about the Danny Gray pick is I mentioned to you, I was like, I want to go nasty offense and nasty pass rush. That's what I want. I want a nasty pass rush, and I want an offense that people are afraid to play.
Yep.
And so when I look at the San Francisco 49ers, first 3 picks, I see getting that pass rusher to replace D Ford, getting that figured out, getting nastier at running back and nastier at wide receiver for this new quarterback. And I think that, while there's parts of the draft that are, questionable, we got Jesse Naylor right here, Last Second Sports. What up? Make sure you check out his channel if you're not subscribed to him already. You think about this offense and what they did. They want to just be nasty. I think that they want to be an offense that goes out there and scores a ton of points on you, where, you're afraid to go play the 49ers because not only is their pass rush going to get to your quarterback, but they're also going to score 30 points on you a game. And I think that that's what the 49ers identity should be. Pass rush that literally scares the crap out of players, and an offense that scores 30 points a game. Because if you do that, there aren't many teams in this league that you're not going to be able to beat. And I think that Danny Gray and TDP, while TDP was taken, way too high when they could have maybe gotten someone else, I think that shows that their devotion to doing that is there. And so 49ers breakdown, he's agreeing with me. We're good. Let's move on to the next pick. And this kind of also is going with that idea. It's Spencer Burford. He's a big mauling offensive lineman. They like to run the ball. I mean, what did you think of Spencer Burford? Oh my God.
Burford.
I can't talk today. Burford, David.
Yeah. So the more I look at him, I think there's a lot of guys I trust that really like him. I think that, I was a big guy on getting a developmental tackle. Now, what looks like Burford is the guy who's played a lot of tackle, left tackle, but that really is going to be the swing inside, similar to what we saw Jalen Moore last year. And they got another prospect we'll talk about here later, Zakelj, that I think that he has everything it takes to be a quality guard for Shanahan's offense. I am excited about him. I do think that he has a lot of potential, and I think he can play swing tackle as well and see what happens at right side. That being said, again, I think that both him and Zakelj, we'll talk about, is you got 2 guys that play more tackle than not, and you're thinking about swinging them sides. Zakelj maybe even at center. I'm not. It's that we've seen some guys sometimes in the Shanahan tenure about trying to do that. Your Tarvarius Moore, corner to safety, things like that. I hope that translation is fluid, and I hope that works. I think that he has all the talent to succeed, and I think the 49ers' clear philosophy here in this draft is volume draft. Like I said, I didn't think they'd spend all 9 picks. They sat. They didn't trade up. They did not trade down.
Yeah, it was kind of
and they said, oh, you know what? We're going to do what the Vikings did last year. They drafted like 11 or 12 guys and just say, you bring these guys in the camp. If they don't all make the team, we might try to stash them on the practice squad. If somebody just poaches them, so be it. But we're going to get competition, and may the best men win. And so I don't look in day 3. I am a big advocate in trusting your scouting to an extent, but like looking at guys that have the traits to really be successful. I'd rather the Niners take a chance on somebody on day 3 that they think could be special or potentially be a long-term fit than just some middle of the road guy that like people know their name, but doesn't necessarily have a chance to like maybe do much other than be a backup. And so I love the fact that you're going to bring some of these guys in. Now, do I have a crystal ball and think this guy's going to be a legend? No. But I do think that I don't mind that philosophy. I do have a concern potentially of like, is this something where you asking the guy who's played tackle in college, more often than not, to come in and swing inside and have that work seamlessly? That remains to be seen.
Itchy95 says he's got 35-inch arms. He could be a tackle too. But
true. Oh yeah. He was a tackle in college. Yeah.
I mean, it feels like, we talk a lot about the 49ers' new draft philosophy, and because they're a built team now, a team that, while they aren't, a Super Bowl champion team like the Rams, they're still one of the better teams in the NFL. And so when you're built like this, you can tend to, draft guys to replace guys when their contracts are up, or replace guys when, it's time for them to move on, or whatever it is, or they get an injury that they can't come back from. And so having depth is a huge part of winning a Super Bowl, I think. I think people kind of underestimate that. We talk about the best rosters in the NFL, right? Well, what good does the best roster in the NFL do you whenever almost everyone gets hurt in a season? That's true. So when you have some sort of depth at every position, and because guys are going to get hurt, it's the National Football League. Nobody stays healthy forever. Guys are always going to get hurt. Some guys more than others. Somehow Russell Wilson played 9 seasons without getting hurt. It's an insane stat I've ever seen in my entire freaking life. I don't know how he did it. But guys, tend to get hurt. And you bring up these guys behind, and they end up starting for you, and they play well, and it helps you continue, your win streaks and continue to get better seeding and all that stuff. And so, picks like this on day 3 are the kind of picks that lead to teams competing for longer and being able to immediately replace a guy, put a guy in who's already in the system, understands what's going on. So 49ers Breakdown says he likes Buford at left guard. He's got a mean streak and should also bring the best out of Aaron Banks. That's another thing. The competition we're going to see at training camp this year, I think, is going to be huge, because I think it's going to be mauling, a lot of guys just competing, because there's not a ton of spots. You think, 52 is not a lot of spots, but or is a lot of spots, and then you see how fast it fills up when you have a great football roster.
And that's the thing I want to tell people. Like I've been saying, look, I don't doubt. I've been told that the Niners like Aaron Banks, and they drafted him last year to replace Laken Tomlinson. I mean, I disagree with that. Like I also think that you're right. You got a solid roster, you groom and you develop. And I think that's a point to be made. I also don't think it's that so I respect the Niners move, and the fact that they let Laken walk, it does give credence to the fact that was their plan with Banks. That being said, again, healthy player played five snaps, not 5 games, 5 snaps last
Breaking
year.
Breaking news, David.
What?
Breaking news. Someone do the beeps.
Oh my God, what's going on?
Deebo Samuel has refollowed the 49ers on Instagram.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't. I know, that's why the dramatic pause after Deebo Samuel.
Oh boy.
I thought. Sorry to interrupt you. I thought it was funny. You got to.
No. It's fair. It's fair. It's like, look. I'll tell you, people, man, this thing has been a roller coaster. And the bottom line, I was going to reiterate to everybody listening: Deebo Samuel, under no certain circumstances, absolutely requested to be traded. It was back and forth, and I think the Niners, I'm not going to say either to their credit or otherwise, they dug their heels in too. And I thought this could be a dicey situation, but hopefully they're going to be able to look. Always said, I thought that. Before he went through Darlington, I thought more likely he stays. After that, I was like, okay, it's more likely that he moves. And there were, God, man, what a roller coaster. I tell you what, I am really hoping they iron this out. I really am. And I'm hoping that it's palatable for both sides, because there's nothing more, like you said, I want to see a dangerous offense. I want to see Trey Lance, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Danny Gray, TDP. I don't know. I want to see all these guys going. So, hey, that's good news.
Let's keep going. Moving on with the draft picks. The next pick we've got is Samuel Womack. And it's interesting because, me and you talk to Marco a lot. He's pretty much, the guy who I trust when it comes to a lot of these players. He doesn't like Samuel Womack at all. And so when he doesn't like guys like that, it kind of, it startles me almost, because, to draft a guy this high, obviously it's the 5th round, but we know, the 5th round is where the 49ers hit, their stars. But the thing is for all we know, we're going to say, we don't like the pick, and then he'll be an all-star in 2 years, and he'll be one of the best cornerbacks in the league, and it won't even matter. But what do you think when you think about Samuel Womack?
What I like about him is he's not as small as I thought. He's like 5'10". I want to say he's like almost 190 or 185. Not 190. I think he's like 180. So
5'9", 189 pounds.
Okay, there he is, 190. So that's what I thought. I looked at him and said, I thought, he doesn't look small. He's a little short in height, but he's a pretty yoked dude. and he's 4.35 speed, right? He's got the I think it was that. I might be off on that. Maybe it was a 4.42. But he's a fast dude, right? He's an athletic guy. Long arms for his size. I mean, almost 32 plus inch arms in that situation. And he led cornerbacks in college football, not just draft eligible, in pass breakups the last several years. Now, granted, it's in the MAC, but there's a guy I liked a lot, Tyson Anderson, safety out of Toledo. Similar style of athlete, but just a different player. So I can see, and I was watching him, I can understand what the 49ers liked about him. And you could talk about scouting the prospect, well, with his traits, but also the production. That's where you're looking at, okay, production and prospect actually kind of check some boxes. I mean, interestingly enough, it's like PFF's not gospel. PFF's got grades on almost every player of the world. Samuel Womack, I went to look at, they didn't even have a file on him. I think this is a guy who's most likely going to be a UDFA, but you never know. It's a niche pick, right? It's a guy they look at being a slot corner. They're not going to look at him playing outside. He did play some outside, obviously for Toledo. But I think this is a guy they're looking at being in the slot. And if this hits, again, day 3, he is. I want athletes in day 3. He's an athlete. It'd be great to meld with production. He's been a productive player with pass breakups. That being said, I think his size profile kind of limits him. And if he comes in and competes with Diamador Lenore, who seemed to see the field early and then all of a sudden was gone, there's going to be guys that don't make this team, right? And so, again, with regard to what Marco said, to me, day 3, jury's out. But if this guy can be a contributor, it's not going to surprise me based on round 5 success for the last 5 years. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I think he's going to have an uphill battle given the competition. And if he can make it, more power to him.
Let's quickly say hello to some of our friends. We got CG Ruther Sports. What's up, man? How you doing? And then Taryn actually says, I love the 49ers brought in more speed on both sides of the ball, which I think is, the thing we're talking about a lot is these guys are all fast, right? And so you think about, the 49ers situation at quarterback sort of interesting because they had K1 almost the whole entire time. I think K1 came in, he was one of the first dudes they signed pretty early when Kyle took over. And so K1 kind of being over the hill, you move on to Lenore, Dante Johnson, maybe Womack. And I think you have, battles at every position, battles everywhere where guys are having to work their ass off to get a position. I think that's what I want to see. And if Womack can go out there and play hard and battle his way to a starting job and beat out Lenore or make Lenore a better football player, I think that's all that matters, And so I'm hoping that, these positions they're drafting lead to battles and lead to, maybe even it's not the player they drafted being better, it making the other players better. And I think that this is a pick that really says, hey, we like Lenore, but let's see if we can get Lenore to work a little harder, see if he, get more out of him. Because right now, I don't know who the nickel corner is for the 49ers. I don't know a lot of people who do. And so you'd have to draft a nickel. You have to draft a guy who can potentially fill that spot. CG Ruthless also says, this draft class depth, in my opinion, was a solid B overall. I think, B minus, maybe B plus, kind of like that. I don't know. How did you feel? Obviously, we're going to get more, but what was your grade?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the depth or just the overall class, I think that the thing is, Drake Jackson was and as much as I like Danny Gray, I also don't think Danny Gray is a lock to necessarily be a guy that comes out and breaks out right away. If he did, that would be great. But you look at, if Debo's here, you got Debo and Ayuk, right?
Yeah.
Now, and then you got Juwan Jennings, who's really earned his stripes. I don't know, how often does Kyle really go with these 3 or, obviously never really a 4 wide receiver set. So Danny Gray is going to have, I think it's going to take some time for him to get to earn his stripes at a Shanahan offense. So again, not a lot of guys that you're thinking, where do you step in and necessarily be the guy?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
B. Yeah, I'm not going to give a letter grade. I think it's an incomplete.
Let's just go to a couple more comments and we'll keep going. Taryn Lewis also says, would you be surprised if we traded a cornerback during training camp or preseason like we did with the linebacker? I know you didn't like that we traded that linebacker.
I would have rather kept Jonas Griffith and traded Dre Greenlaw last year. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I think there's going to be guys that probably happens, and that's not a bad spot to be because you're not trading guys that you're counting on being starters. Like, right? You hope that you acquired enough talent that it's worth a couple, to flip them for what you drafted them for. So, I think, like you said, Nate, like it's bringing in guys volume wise and saying if you make iron sharpens iron, as Harbaugh used to say, right? Like, making guys better and made the best man win. And if these guys don't make the team, so be it. Like you can't, this team drafted 9 guys. There's no way in hell all 9 of those guys make this roster.
No, of course not. Yeah.
Right. So
one more question, then we'll keep going. Ambry is possible nickel 2 if Ward and Mosley and Verrett start outside. So Verrett was re-signed. So that was a big one too, to re-sign him. But let's keep going. These will probably go a little faster now. I don't know how to say this. It's Nick Zakeji. Is that right?
I think it's Zakelj.
It's Zakelj. Yo, English is wild. There's some things in English I'm just like, what? Like salmon has an L in it, and you don't say the L.
Bro,
hell?
Bro, I voice texted this name. I voice texted his name into my phone, and it somehow spelled it correctly with like all these little like the little accents over the Z and everything. I was like, my iPhone is crazy. But yeah, this guy is the guy that Adam Peters had said that they'd been scouting him for 4 years at Fordham, and that they liked his movement skills and feel like he could actually project into a center. And so if everybody's like, oh, they drafted their center of the future, I'm like, well, maybe. I think that's the thing. It's a maybe, right? Like this guy played tackle and a little bit of guard. He didn't play center in college. Like maybe he did a little bit early in his career that I missed, but he was their left, playing left tackle at Fordham. And so all of a sudden you're asking the guy at left tackle to move into center. Hey, scout the prospect, not the production. But again, the Niners have shown they trust their scouting department. Yeah. And so for better or for worse. And so I love it to see these guys come in. He's goes to the shorter arms, doesn't project the tackle. Hopefully it works. But worst comes to worse, you've got a bunch of guys in Jalen Moore, Zakelj, Burford, even Colton McKivitz that have played other positions, come on inside. They're going to compete and see what happens. No hopes up for this dude. But I think that, if things pan out, they pan out.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that these guys, these linemen they draft are good, but like, I don't know much about Nick. His name, it's Zakeji for a nice breakdown. Thank you, dude. Appreciate
That's how you pronounce it?
Zakeji, yeah.
Jeez.
Yo, English is wild. Like, it's such a
dude, it's LJ, and LJ is Zakeji.
Let's I know it's wild.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
You're the teacher, man.
Brett Favre.
Brett Favre. Okay, let's keep going. Kalia Davis is the next pick. People were kind of mad about it when they picked him because apparently he has the ACL. But this is a kid who, he's big, 6'1", 301 pounds, like recorded 17 tackles, 4.5 tackles for a loss of 1 sack. These are the kind of guys they tend to get in some of the later rounds who, end up playing downs for this team. And we see them play downs, maybe not starting downs, but they play some sort of, they come in, Kevin Givens kind of guys. And I feel like this guy could be like that. I mean, what are you thinking?
This is actually sad. I mean, this is probably my favorite day 3 pick. And the thing is that people talk about Trent Baalke and team ACL. The bottom line is we're talking about a guy at the bottom of the 6th round here. Okay. That's borderline. This is actually one of the last 2 picks of the 6th round compensatory. So it really is almost a 7th round pick. Okay. So here's a guy who doesn't have a huge injury history. He just got injured season. There's a lot of guys that got injured. Jameson Williams, now granted, he's one of the best players in the draft, but tore his ACL as well and got drafted number 12. Okay. So guys get better. Kalia Davis, he's a guy, Kalia Davis, that would have been a 3rd or 4th round pick. I think no worse than a 4th round pick if he wouldn't have got hurt. His stature, very similar to DJ Jones, a guy that lines up in the interior who can disrupt the pocket. a really, really good athlete. And he's just one of those dudes that, to me, I actually think they could start him on NFI because of his injury, and he could come in. Oh, the J is now silent. LOL.
Apparently, the J is silent. And it's Zakel.
It's not Zakeji. Why? Who was giving me that phonetic Zakeji? Man, I resent that.
49ers breakdown. He deserves 49ers breakdown. You're on timeout. I'm not going to put you actually on timeout, but you're on timeout.
Man, Zakel now. Zakel.
CG Ruthless. It's Zakel. The J is silent. All right. Hopefully you're
Lord.
right. CG.
Lord help me. Yeah. Kalia Davis, the S is silent. It's Kalia Davis. I just I honestly, he might be ready in the middle of the season. If he's not, there's so much defensive line depth, and they can put him in FI or PUP or whatever it is. But no, I like this kid. I think he's one of those classic 49ers defensive line depth players. And if you're drafting 9 guys, one of them could be a guy that doesn't have to play right away and has a lot of potential. So I'm all about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, we kind of boast about our defensive line so often, and the reason it's so good is because the 49ers tend to not only get guys in free agency, but they find guys in the later rounds who end up, playing meaningful downs, all that stuff. And so a guy like this comes in after his injury, plays meaningful downs, looks good, and he's not going to be Nick Bosa, he's not going to be D Ford, Eric Armstead, but hopefully there's something there and they get meaningful downs out of him. It's a 6th-round pick. We're talking about 6th and 7th-round picks,
Yep.
At this point, there's a different way you talk about these guys at this point, but let's keep going on 2 more draft picks to talk about, and we'll talk about some undrafted until the end of the show. We got Tariq Castro Fields. He is a cornerback out of Penn State. He was there. He had 30 starts. That's a lot for some of these guys.
Yeah.
Recording 138 tackles, 10 tackles for a loss, 3 interceptions, and 25 pass breakups, as well as a forced fumble. When you're looking at this guy, what were you thinking? I mean, how did this guy go this? That's my question is, how did this guy fall when you look at some of the stuff and you're just like, yo, this kid seems like he might have been pretty nice.
I mean, I think that there were some concerns with, I agree with you. I think he was a 5th-year starter. They had that COVID year. They gave him that 5th year. Probably good that he stayed. I mean, remember last year people thought he was going to come out last year, and he was a guy that was charted to be higher even last year. So, guy that absolutely has the skills to play safety. And that was the first thing I remember talking in the draft that Marco had talked about. Like, hey, this might be a guy with safety skills, a la Travarius Moore. That's going to be somebody that kind of comes in. So, I think he can gamble a little bit. I think he's got all the athleticism, the size to be successful. I know Eric Crocker was doing a little quick kind of cut up on him on the TL here just right before the show that had me encouraged and had me looking and thinking about. And, somebody had speculated, he'd had a shoulder stinger injury in 2020, but, he didn't miss a game in 3 out of the last 4 years. Including last year, he didn't miss anything. So, I think that whether he's outside, I like the idea. I don't mind. Look, it's a secondary. I like positionless stuff. If he's got the size and ability and skill to kind of see what he can do at safety, people have talked about his tackling, but I'm more concerned with coverage where he's at. And again, like you said, man, into the 6th, take a flyer on a guy that had the talent to go higher and the athletic profile that to match. Again, I like the pick here.
When I looked at him, I was like, this kid could be, Ruthless just said it. He's the steal. He could be the steal of the draft. I mean, like, It just seems like it was kind of weird that he felt like he did. I think a lot of people were kind of surprised when you looked into him a little more, just how athletic he is. He's pretty solid in coverage. Like, how does a guy like this fall this far? And so maybe we'll see, in training camp, he's nothing, but he was kind of exciting. Like, when they drafted him, you look into him, this is kind of an exciting pick. Now, like I said, depth at cornerback, depth at maybe safety if they want to move him to safety. I mean, how do you feel about them potentially moving him to safety, David?
I have no problem with that because I think that right now Travarius Ward is going to be CB1. Okay. Yeah, Emmanuel Mosley's got 1 year left on his contract. It remains to be seen what they do with that. I like Emmanuel Mosley. I don't know if he's in their long-term plans completely, but we'll see. Ambry Thomas, who I thought showed a lot of growth at the end of the year, but still is a guy that's probably, at least right now on paper, charted behind Mosley, depending on how it transpires. I think anything can happen. I think Castro Fields gets in there and they give him a little bit of chance to show what he can do at both positions. I don't think that safety opposite Jimmy Ward is set in stone. I think George Odom is in there that can be a special teams ace and can be very serviceable. I think you've got, Talanoa Hufanga, who I don't know how high they are on him, but I think they're going to platoon it a little bit. They're going to see what they can do.
Yeah.
And D'Amico Ryans likes to play guys in waves and different packages. And so it doesn't have to be one guy set in stone. So let's see what he can do. I think I'm just glad to have that type of skill set on the team and the clay that they can mold with him.
CJ with us says he was surprised that he slid to the 6th round. Apparently he had a 3rd round grade. So pretty exciting. I mean, to see a guy like that slide. I'm curious, we'll find out obviously what he is, but it could be like one of those, depth picks where he doesn't play at all next year. And when Mosley inevitably leaves, then, he replaces him and he's a talented football player. And so we'll see what happens with him. But that's a pretty exciting draft class. And then it gets even more exciting, David. Brock Purdy.
Oh, fuck yeah.
The most Purdy pick of the draft. I had to do a dad joke too. Brock Purdy. I mean, how exciting is this pick right here? Just Mr. Irrelevant. Did you hear what happens for Mr. Irrelevant? The crazy shit they get to do. What an awesome thing for Brock.
Pretty good. And that's the thing. Like I'm just gonna say, like, now look, I'm an Iowa State. I grew up in Iowa. My parents went to Iowa State. My sister works for the university. My grandpa was a professor there. So I grew up I actually had season tickets to Cyclones football as a kid, middle school. And so I watch a lot of Cyclones football on the treadmill, Big 12 ball. Brock Purdy's a guy, he's an all-time passing leader at Iowa State. He was phenomenal his freshman year. Solid throughout, but kind of regressed. I think I chalk that up to a lot of coaching. Matt Campbell's a good coach, but I don't know how well they really grew him. I think he's a 6'1", so he's not a lot of height, but he's a plus athlete. He can make all the throws on the field. His arm is underrated, but he's a guy that is going to be able to come into a Shanahan system, and I think have a pretty seamless transition. I can very much see him beating out a guy like Dave Sudfeld. I really can. I don't think that they're counting on that because he's the backup or 3rd string quarterback. But for the 7th round pick, I actually had mocked. I said, hey, if you're going to hold on to all 9 picks and not trade, you might as well take a flyer on a quarterback if you can. And one of the guys I was looking at was Skylar Thompson out of Kansas State, and the other guy was Brock Purdy at Iowa State. And lo and behold, when he yelled that name, when they called that name out, man, I was just jumping around the living room. I honestly. I'm going to have fun with this one because I know you talked about this a couple of years ago. Brock Purdy, legit, after his sophomore year, there was talk about him finagling on the way into a 1st round. Like there was definitely like day 2 floor that this guy was going to have, and so he had this kind of had his boneheaded things. And I'll admit, watching a lot of Iowa State football. There were times where I kind of felt like there was some head scratching, but I think he has all the tools. Kyle said he reminds him a little of Nick Mullins. And people said, "Oh, that's not good." Well, Nick Mullins, Nick Mullins was a very solid backup quarterback for Kyle Shanahan, and that's really all they're looking for in a guy like Brock Purdy.
They just want Trey Lance to have a backup. I mean, that's the thing. They don't want to pay Jimmy Garoppolo $26 million. They don't want to do that. Whether or not the Jimmy people on Twitter want them to do it, the Niners don't want to do it. The Niners have no want to do it. And so that's the thing at the end of the day. It's like they draft this guy because they hope he's the future, 1st round, they don't hope he's the future 1st round pick that they get because he's so good and he's sitting behind Trey Lance. They just hope he's the backup for Trey Lance for years to come, where they can, have a solid backup in case Trey Lance gets hurt. Knock on wood, don't let it happen, that kind of stuff. And so I hope he's awesome. I hope he enjoys all the cool shit he gets for being Mr. Irrelevant. I'm pretty sure he gets to go to Disneyland. he gets to go to a Dodger or an Angel game. Don't go to the Dodger game,
Yeah,
Brock.
nobody wants to do that.
Go to the Angel game. I think the Giants are losing the Dodgers right now. I wore my Niners Giants hat today because they're playing the Dodgers and those bastards are losing again.
And what did that do for
But
you?
it did nothing for me. Just like wearing my Warriors jacket yesterday did nothing for me because they lost those bastard Timber. I said
Hey.
Grizzlies. They're bastards. The Timberwolves are bastards.
Oh man.
We got a couple of minutes left. Let's just talk about some of your favorite UDFAs. I'm gonna just read off the names. There's 14 of them, so I'm gonna go pretty quickly.
Here we go.
Kevin Atkins, Jeremiah Gemmel, Taylor Hawkins. Oh my God. Quantrez Knight. I think I'm right actually on that one.
Yeah,
Taser Mack, Tay Martin, Jordan Mason, Marcelino McCrary Ball, Segun Olubi, Leon O'Neal Jr., Jason Poe, Sam Schletter, Garrett. Oh my God, these names. Garrett Walston and Donovan West. And I think that the name that I've heard, there's two names I've heard that most common, and I want to hear your thoughts on this too. The two names I've heard the most common with 49er fans are Donovan West and Jason Poe. And I think that that's because they really need, the excitement of having even more O-line depth and the fact that they could have even more cheap offensive line play. I think that's exciting. And these guys are both, talented football players. But who are some of your favorite guys here?
Yeah, it's those two guys and Sam Schletter from Minnesota, the offensive lineman. And this is the thing. Look, I wasn't as high as Donovan West as some others were. I think there are people that talked about him being like a clear-cut round 3 guy. I think that he's another guy, a young guy who's just turning 21, 3-year starter at Arizona State, didn't do anything poorly, but I think he's 6'3", a little bit undersized, but people talk about how he didn't carry his weight great, but they gave him $100,000, like as far as the contract, like that was the priority signing. The question remains though, if like you liked him that much, why not draft him in the 4th round or the 5th round?
Yeah.
Right. And so any UDFA I'm jury's out on, but then again, Jason Poe, a guy that everybody had targeted seemingly before the draft because he had this like athletic freak. He's only 6'1", but he moves like a fullback, like an H-back. Like he's fast. I mean, he's just incredibly agile and quick. But then Sam Schletter from Minnesota, he is a guy that I feel like all 3 of these dudes, that's the thing I want to see. Now, Burford and Zakeji, well, we don't know yet. They were drafted higher, but Shanahan doesn't play politics. And if these guys get into camp, I honestly can see like the 3 guys I'm looking at are, like I said, Poe, West, and Schletter. And I think that those dudes can. I don't know why they don't have just as much ability to show out as the guys that got drafted above them. And we're just going to see how it pans out. And that's where it seems like the Niners are going. They said, we want to figure this offensive line out. We want to throw as many darts as we can, get as many guys in the building. And if one or more of these guys can really show out, like really impress, okay, then we've got something. And Absolutely. They can always stash these dudes in the practice squad. They're not all going to get poached.
And the thing that excites me the most about Poe is I was in a space earlier today, and people pointed out. Do you remember Wu Tukuafu? Tukuafu, I think his name was.
Will Tukuafu. Yeah.
Yeah. And they would the 49ers, this is back when they're bad, of course, but they would just get on the goal line and they would just let Will Tukuafu just try and barrel in. I hope they do that with Poe. Bring him in a couple games and let him do it. Why not?
I saw footage of this dude. Like he was legit running routes and like he played some fullback at Mercer. Like he done some of these kind of things. Like he's not like Will the Fridge Perry. Like he's actually a legit athlete. Like, yeah, there's bring him in as an extra blocker in the backfield. Like as a full, like seriously, I know I'm not even joking. Like if you've got a guy like that on your team, you might as well utilize him in goal line packages. They've done it with Trent Williams, for Christ's sake. They did it with him in the playoffs. Get a guy that's actually done it in college and actually has that ability and that leverage. So who knows, right?
And then another one I want to talk to you before, we're coming towards the end. The other guy I want to talk to you about, because I've just heard so much about him, is Leon O'Neal Jr. And I know that he obviously isn't the fastest guy, but the 49ers need safeties. So, I mean, what is your thoughts on Leonel? I don't know if he can play safety for the 49ers because he's kind of a slower guy, but a lot of people thought he was going drafted for sure before this draft. And
I'm gonna get into trouble here because I don't like to rag on players. Like it's one of those things. Like I just feel like there's reasons some guys go UDFA, and I wish this guy the best. I'm not gonna throw shade. I also think that slow and he missed over 18% of his tackles. Now last year, the worst missed tackle rate in the secondary was Jaquiski Tartt at like almost 14%. Okay. 18.8% like was his missed tackle rate. That's, and I kind of subtweeted like I said, hey, slow and not able to tackle. That's hard to play safety in the NFL, especially when you're in that box role where that's what you're expected to do. Doesn't mean you can't lay the wood. And he actually was decent in coverage, but like instincts are a little bit, out of place. Like, and by the way, there's that great clip of TDP just absolutely trucking him into like another universe.
Posted about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So I took the words right out of my mouth. So like, look, that's a single play. The bottom line is what we saw, and I think there's some tape before, is like there are a lot of single plays that I saw of Leon O'Neal like just been put on skates. And when you miss a tackle as a safety, it's different. Like those missed tackles can be like big time one-on-one plays in open field, and you just gave up a house call. And I honestly think that liability is a concern to me. But he's a UDFA, right? Like you get him in camp, you see what happens. I don't expect him to make the team.
I'd love it if he made the team and he was talented, but probably not. It's more just to see what he has, and I think that's a lot of these UDFAs are that. And so if any of them hits, that's super exciting. But we'll see. David, I want to thank you again for coming on here, talking to me about all these draft picks. So many interesting players. It's going to be really interesting to see what the 49ers look like in training camp. And I really hope that it's just a good old Lord of the Rings type battle, orcs versus humans, nonstop, dark side versus light side battles at all positions, And so I'm super excited, and I think that we have that going on with these guys, and it should be a lot of fun to watch and hear about from the beat writers that are down there. So, David, if people want to check out you and see your Twitter, how can they do it?
Yeah, you check me out at Backcountry Fam. I am on the TL talking 49ers, talking about meeting Pedro Pascal on May the 4th be with you. That's my story tonight about how I crashed the Mandalorian's Christmas party. If you want content like that, follow me on Twitter. I'll try not to annoy you.
Yeah, May the 4th be with you. And may the 49ers find a way to kick ass this season, right? I mean,
hell yeah, man.
Win they will, right? You can find me at NinerNate49 on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe to Niner Nate's Nonsense here on YouTube. At 1,000, we're going to give away a jersey. It's not going to be a Trey Lance jersey anymore. It's any jersey you want at this point, and it's going to be one of the new ones. So what more do you want from me? Press the subscribe button. You got no reason not to. Oh, yeah, and one more thing. Trey never stops, baby.